All right. Well, another disgruntled fan base. Nailed it. Edmonton Oilers. As of right now, the Edmonton Oilers are out of the playoffs by points percentage and holding on by a thread with raw points. Every year we hear rumors about McDavid and Draisaitl and how they're going to be disgruntled or they're getting disgruntled. Do you think that the Oilers will be making a big splash at this deadline to prevent that? And if so, who?
Well, I think it's hard to make a big splash for a lot of teams, and especially the Edmonton Oilers. Salary cap situation is really tight there. And I know the fan base has really been upset with their goaltending this year. On the blue line, I don't think, some of the guys, Barry hasn't had a great year, I don't think. And Bouchard's been up and down. And so there's a lot of discontent, and understandably so, especially in those markets, whether it's Buffalo or whether it's Edmonton, or they've just been so bad for so long. And the frustrating part now is that however many years ago it was that they got to the second round and they finally won a first round series, and they lost, I think, to Anaheim in the second round that year.
They did in seven. In seven.
And everybody said, okay, that's it. They've turned the corner. And from here on in, it's going to be a rocket ride on the back of McDavid and Draisaitl and Nurse and all these guys. It's going to be fantastic. Cups galore and bring back the dynasty years. And in fact, what's happened is they've stopped and they've stuttered, and I can't even imagine what would happen if they don't make the playoffs this year. But because I thought, in fairness, some of the moves they made, I thought, they at the beginning of the year, you know what, that was good, getting Warren Fogle and trying to get some credible depth beyond the top 5 or 6 forwards, and it just hasn't panned out that way. And that, so in answer to your question, what do they do? I think they're looking for some help on the blue line, but it's not at the high end by any stretch, and it's more on the depth thing. So I wonder about guys like Middleton, and I wonder about guys like Kulak, and you mentioned Justin Braun and a bunch of other names like that. So I'll be curious to see, how they go about it. There's not a lot of flexibility in terms of the cap. And so I know fans are unhappy and they desperately want something really positive to hang on to. But if the Oilers do something, and I say if they do something at the deadline, it's more likely, my sense of it, is more likely to be a depth move. Yeah. And nobody's gonna get too overly excited about a depth move, especially when you're, as you pointed out, points percentage wise, they're not in a playoff spot right now.
I mean, if the Oilers are going to do anything bigger than what you're talking about, Bob, it's got to be money in, money out, right? It just has to. Yeah. And so if you're moving money out, you're going to have to pay a premium for that. So they're not I don't envy Ken Holland, and I certainly don't envy him if they don't make the playoffs, because I don't know that, I'm a big Ken Holland supporter. I always have been. But I'm not sure that he and Bob Nicholson survive if the Oilers don't make the playoffs. That's purely speculation on my part, but I think it would be tough to justify it.
Yeah. So. Well, Kens are notoriously pack animals. They tend to stick together.
That's right.
Yes. And feast over the carcass of the Edmonton Oilers. If Edmonton doesn't make the playoffs, do you think we've reached a point where we would see McDavid or Draisaitl or even a Darnell Nurse, but one of these guys finally, if not ask for a trade, because I know that there's a technical definition behind ask for a trade, but maybe just say, hey, Ken, wouldn't be opposed to moving on?
You got to be really careful how you answer a question like that, because we used to call this getting radioed. I don't want to get. I don't want to get unfiltered.
Yeah.
Dylan mentioned that yesterday. Yeah.
I was going to call the whole segment radioed. I was going to say, Bob McKenzie, welcome to the radioed segment.
See, I don't take much credit for anything in my career, but coming up with the term getting radioed is mine. Like I invented it.
Yeah.
Because I used to do so much radio, and and you do a radio thing, and I learned a couple of things. Number one, sometimes it's just how it's presented. Some of the radio stations you would do the work with, they would take one little clip of what you said and then just put it on social media, and nobody would even listen to the rest of the interview. There was all sorts of context before, context after. They just heard that. That was the very purest definition of being radioed. But here's the other thing is, and this is, people used to say, oh, Bob McKenzie never gives an opinion on anything. And there was a reason why I didn't give an opinion on a lot of things, because the more opinions I gave, the more it was construed, because I was quote unquote the hockey insider and supposed to be the authoritative voice for what is going to be factual and true, and you can trust it. And that if I just give my opinion, somebody will say Bob McKenzie reported that.
Right.
And that actually, that has happened on a number of occasions where I would give an opinion on something that obviously turned out to be wrong. And people would say, well, he reported that so-and-so was getting traded to so-and-so, when I said, no, I think maybe a team like this could use a guy like that. And then people would think, so I got to be really careful, because if I sit here and say to you, yeah, you know what, I think if the Oilers miss the playoffs, Connor McDavid's going to demand a trade for sure. People are going to say,
isolate that, Dylan, in the editing.
Exactly. There are people gotcha. Bob McKenzie just reported that Connor McDavid asked for a trade out of Edmonton. And
I can edit out the I think.
That'll get us on the map.
Yeah. But I know where you live, Kenny, so be careful. But in any case, I would say to that type of question is, I have no idea what Connor McDavid's mindset is, other than I can't even imagine. Put it this way. If the Edmonton Oilers miss the playoffs this year and their fans are really, really, really upset, I'm going to say that Connor McDavid is 97 times more upset than the fans are. That's what I'm going to say. Yeah. And whether there would ever be a point in time where he would say, I've had it here, I'm not going to speculate that. I have no idea. I can't get inside Connor McDavid's mind, other than to know that those guys, they're two of the very best players in the National Hockey League. And obviously some people would say, and rightfully so, Connor McDavid is the best player in the world. And now you're locked into this long-term deal in Edmonton, and you assumed, like everybody else, that when you lost to Anaheim in 7 games a number of years ago, that the organization had turned the corner and it was let the good times roll. And then here you are, whatever it is, 4 or 5 years later, and you're not in the playoffs, or you make the playoffs and you get bounced in the first round. Mm-hmm. At some point, something's got to give if they don't take a step. And right now they haven't taken that step. Not to say they won't, but it's a pretty precarious situation, I would think.
So, Bob, speaking of taking a step, you just proved that you have not lost a step, because I set you up for the radio segment and you sidestepped that masterfully, but still managed to give an interesting opinion on the subject. Ken, is there anything else about the Edmonton Oilers you want to get into before
I'm a little Edmonton Oiler out these days. Yeah, I'm good. Let's move on to the Tampa Bay Lightning.